Welcome everybody to the webinar titled How to Manage Your Emotions Effectively. We're going to talk about how to use your emotions properly and manage them effectively in 3 different areas or lifestyles, if you will. Okay, so my name is Mendy Dubov. I'm the founder of Yellow Mentality. We're going to talk about that and what Yellow Mentality is in a second. I do some public speaking as well. And I am a peak performance coach. I work with people from anywhere along the scope of stock trading, athletic performance. I work with performers. I've worked with actors. So anything really along the lines of being completely conscious and present in a moment, which is extremely important when it comes to performing. Those are my clientele, if you will. So again, I've worked with all different types of performers, and it's all about becoming present in a moment and being there with your whole entire being, which is essentially what Yellow Mentality is, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, so everyone hears, and anyone here probably that is at this webinar has heard of Yellow Mentality, and I get asked all the time, what is Yellow Mentality? Who comes up with an idea of a color and a mental being or a mental mindset? What kind of idea is that? What is the Yellow Mentality? I get asked all the time by my friends, by new clients, by colleagues, by everybody. And what essentially Yellow Mentality is a combination of 2 different ideas. We have a color and we have the mentality, which is a mindset. Okay, so yellow in psychology, every color represents something different. But if you look at Disney characters in general, you find that every character represents their emotion of their personality. So Oscar the Grouch represents this grouchy old man, is so to say, where he's always grouchy, and that color represents that emotion. So yellow in psychology represents positivity and energy. So the yellow part of the mentality is always being upbeat, always being positive, always being optimistic about what's happening in your life. Okay, mentality is the mindset that you have. So putting together a yellow mindset, if you will, is having a positive mindset in all times, having an optimistic attitude, having a positive attitude when everything's going wrong, when everything's not working out for you. If you're able to have a yellow mentality in those moments, and we're going to talk about, each of us are going to talk about different lifestyles where emotions might come in. And if you can stick with your yellow mentality, if you can have a yellow mentality in those hard times, then that is the peak of what success, personal success would mean for you. That's how you really achieve full mastery as a person. You become unshakable as a person. Nobody can hurt you emotionally because you have this yellow mentality deeply rooted in your mind. Okay, so yellow mentality is your state of being in a moment. When coffee spills all over your shirt, then you're about to walk into a huge meeting that's going to decide whether you get a job or not. That attitude that you have in that moment is going to determine the next hours, X amount of hours of your day, and absolutely the meeting that you're about to have. And if you can kick in that yellow mentality in that moment, that's how you become effective, and that's how you become unshakable, if you will. Also, yellow mentality represents the idea that thoughts lead to feelings. We're the only creatures on this earth that we can think something and feel it. We think of a negative thought and it leads to anxiety, it leads to high stress. And again, the idea of yellow mentality is thinking positive in these moments will allow you to only give you positive feelings as opposed to negative feelings when they matter most. Another thing that's important is to remember is that your mind is a muscle. Your mind you can acquire certain traits, and you're not born with certain things. A lot of people think, oh, I wasn't born smart, so that's the end of my education or my 4.0 GPA. But that's not true. Your mind is able to grow and adapt new ideas and new concepts as you learn them. And that's a lot of what yellow mentality represents. Again, that positivity and being optimistic about what you're able to achieve and what you're able to learn. And nothing really is impossible for you. It's just a matter of learning it or adapting to new areas and new scenarios in your life, which will allow you to really reach your ultimate potential. So we're going to start by talking about, and Denise mentioned, we're going to talk about 3 core emotions. We're going to go through sadness, anger, and excitement. Okay, so being that I work with people in performance, I'm going to cover the performance aspect of these three core emotions. Okay, so starting with sadness in performance. Sadness often comes as an introspective self-anger. And what I mean by that is when we become angry at ourselves, we turn inward. And that often turns into sadness. So we become upset for who we've become and how we've let ourselves down. We feel like we lost something. You know, if you look at this picture over here of this athlete that just lost a tennis match, you can see that it looks like she feels like she's been defeated by herself. She looks self-defeated. She looks like she's let herself down or somebody else down. She looks like she lost something, okay? Because sometimes it can be a game if it's a performer. Sometimes it can be a person that we lost and we're feeling sad. And like I said, it can be a belief in yourself. When you lose belief in yourself, sometimes that can be the hardest hit of sadness, because when we feel like we lost ourselves, we all know that sometimes that can end in suicide, which is very, very tragic and unfortunate. But when we feel like we've lost something, we turn to sadness as an introspective self-anger. We're angry with ourselves, and we feel like there's no one else to blame it on. And we're going to talk about how regular anger, often we turn to somebody else to blame because we don't want to take the blame. So we say, it's your fault, and we start screaming at the person next to us or our teammate or our coworker or our spouse, right? But when it comes to sadness, it's I've let everybody else down, I've let myself down, and now I'm turning to this inner sadness where I feel like I'm lost. And it's also very important to remember that when you do feel like you're in this state of sadness, it's important to feel that. And it's a process that every person has to go through. And I know Kristen's going to talk about this a little bit, because I know it's very, very important, especially when it comes to losing somebody in a relationship that you had a relationship with. It's a process that you have to go through. And if you try to get out of that process too quickly, it can be very, very unhealthy for your emotional well-being. And lastly, it's important to realize where it's coming from. Where is the sadness coming from? Is it coming from you losing a person? Is it coming from you feeling like you weren't good enough? Is it coming from you feeling like you should have done better? Where is that sadness coming from? And a lot of times that can give you insight into how you want to manage it and how you want to be better. And we're going to talk about how to deal with each of these three core emotions at the end or closer to the end of this webinar. We're going to talk about how to deal with these three core emotions. But just in this specific slide, it's important to bring up that it's often crucial to remember where it's coming from. Where is the sadness stemming from? So anger in a performance. Anger can often be shown to try to receive validation. And this is a new idea I've come up with recently, that not always do you see, if you were to be hiding, or if you would look at cameras from an athlete or a performer practicing by themselves, you wouldn't usually see them getting angry when they mess up, or if they miss a shot, or if they miss a catch, or if they mess up a specific move in their performance, in ballet, whatever it is. You wouldn't see somebody go as crazy or start cursing as crazy or show body language as crazy as if you would when there are their teammates or their people that are watching them around. And the reason for that is because when we get angry or we pretend to be angry, we're looking for validation. We're looking to show the people around us, the teammates that we're with, the opponent that we're playing against, whoever it is, that we care that we're not performing the way we want to. And what happens is we start to live the performance that our emotions are giving off. So if we get angry during a performance, that our performance will start to emulate that emotion. If we're excited and we're motivated before a performance, our performance will emulate that emotion. So if you're getting angry during a performance, which looking for validation is not something always that you can control. It's not always something that you can monitor as much as you want to, because it's something that you're looking for. If you're lacking validation and you want it, you're going to do things sometimes subconsciously that are going to try to get you to that emotion, try to get you to that validation. But it's important to remember that when you portray a specific emotion during a performance, your performance will start to emulate that specific emotion. Okay, so if you're afraid before a performance, your body language will start to show it, whether you like it or not. And whether you think other people see it or not, they do, because you're going to start to play the way that emotion is expressing itself. And we've talked about this in the previous slides, which is realize where it's coming from. Where is your anger coming from? Is it coming from you not being enough? Is it coming from your performance not being up to par where you wanted to? Is it coming from you wanting to blame other people? Because often anger comes from trying to blame other people. You mess up a pass, and in order to take the blame off yourself, you'll blame somebody else and get angry at them, but really it was your fault from the beginning. But in order to take that blame off yourself to make yourself feel good, you'll blame somebody else for it. You'll blame your teammate for missing the catch when it was you that threw the pass too high. So realizing where this anger is coming from will help you ease that anger. Another thing that is something worth mentioning here is that when you get angry, energy is contagious, and any emotion that you're expressing is going to be contagious throughout the team. So when you get angry, if you're the captain of the team or you're a leader of the team and you get angry, your whole entire team feels that. And if you think that that's helping everybody else perform, it's not. And by blaming your teammate for missing the catch is not helping him, or it's not going to help him perform better. He knows that he missed the catch, and you should know that you put the throw too high, or you passed the ball too low. But blaming your teammates for it and getting angry is not going to help anything. If anything, it's going to make it worse 100% of the time, because that emotion is now going to be expressed throughout the whole entire team. So if you're angry inside and you're not expressing it, that's on you. It's your job, and it's your responsibility to get that anger out of your system as quickly as possible. But the second you express it and it becomes contagious to the entire team, you're bringing down the whole entire team. And now whatever momentum you were looking to gain through your performance as a team is now gone out the window, because everybody is feeling this specific emotion throughout the entire team. So the last of the 3 core emotions that we're going to talk about today is excitement. And it's when we were talking and preparing for this webinar, it was interesting because anger and sadness are somewhat similar or on the same spectrum of an emotion, right? And we talked about how one could be an inner anger that turns into sadness, but excitement is almost like the other side of that. It's like, it's nowhere. Anger and excitement are 2 totally different emotions completely. And it's interesting because if you look at performance, you might see all 3 of those emotions on the court all at the same time. If you have an athlete that just wins a championship game, he'll be excited and elated with happiness, while the person that just lost, that's right next to him on the bench right over, is either burning angry because they lost or extremely sad and borderline depressed because of the situation they just found themselves in, which is a very interesting contrast where you have 2 people that are in 2 totally different mindsets and perspectives just because of information that was given them, right? Let's say you have a tie game in a basketball game, in a championship basketball game, and one team makes the game winner. It was one piece of information that made one person completely excited and happy versus completely angry or sad. So you have these 2 opposite contrast emotions that are often decided by one little piece of information, one little event, one little scenario that happens that can totally shift the way you're coming up emotionally by one piece of information. So excitement comes from reaching. It can come from reaching an achievement. Like I said, it could be winning a basketball game or making that trade that gives your stock company, your investment company, a huge edge over all your competitors. Or it can be sometimes envisioning what that achievement would look like. If I would start talking to you about how you're envisioning or you're thinking about a goal that you have, you start to get excited. Your blood starts to bubble because you're thinking about what's going to happen once that achievement starts to come into reality. So I might say, okay, you're going to go out and you're going to go do this many investments, and your return on your investment is going to be, 1,000%, and now you're going to become a millionaire. Just thinking about these little things starts to get you excited because you're thinking about what your achievement's going to look like. Fear and excitement are often the same emotion coming up. It's just a matter of perspective. And at Yellow Mentality, we talk about perspective a lot because often getting out of a specific rut or getting out of a feeling or getting out of a slump is just a matter of shifting perspective. It's just a matter of how you're looking at the specific scenario. Like I said, you're given a piece of information, and the way you interpret that information will give you specific emotions. So fear and excitement are the same thing. It's just a matter of how you're looking at it. You can be right before a performance and you're scared. But if you just reframe that emotion into excitement and tell yourself, I'm not really scared as much as I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited for what the future is about to hold. I'm excited for what this event's going to give me. And all it is just that little shift in perspective that gives you a whole new meaning and a whole new way to look at the emotion that's coming up for you. Another thing is putting your emotions in perspective. And a lot of people think this is interesting, what I'm about to tell you. But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, where you can be on top of the world because you just won a title, a high school championship game, or the NBA finals, or whatever it is. The list of achievements, of your personal achievements, can go on and on. But thinking about what someone else is going through on the opposite side of that spectrum, or the contrast to what you're feeling in that moment, what's the other person feeling? So you just hit a game winner in a basketball game, and now you're elated with joy. What's the person that was defending you feeling? And when you put that emotion into perspective, it gives you a whole new understanding for that event or that emotion that you're feeling in that moment. So you just hit a game winner in a basketball game, and now you're like, oh my God, I'm on top of the world. I feel like I'm the best. I feel like I'm amazing. I just won the championship game. My team is going to be so proud of me. And if you look over to your right and you see your opponent with his hands in his knees because he feels like he's just failed himself and his team, that feeling that you put in perspective and you look at that person and try to feel what he's feeling in that moment, that you will never feel ever again. When you see the trophy hanging in your room on your shelf of the rest of your trophies from the game winner that you hit, you'll always be able to refer back to the feeling that you had of you succeeding in that moment. But you'll never be able to feel the level, the sense of humility that you can gain by looking at over to your right at the opponent that's feeling the exact opposite of what you're feeling in that moment. So it's a very powerful tool that you can be using, which is put in perspective the feelings that you're experiencing in that moment. You're elated with joy from something that you just achieved. What's somebody else feeling? What's somebody feeling when they just got a call that their parents or their mom or dad was diagnosed with cancer? What's that person feeling in that moment? And when you put all that in perspective, it really shifts and gives you a different reality for that moment, where you think, I feel like the luckiest person, but I'm lucky for so many other reasons, not just for this one, but for the fact that I'm here alive, living, breathing, able to perform at the level I'm performing at, makes you so much more lucky. And what happens when you do that, you start to gain this huge sense of gratitude where you become the luckiest person in the world, which is extremely, extremely powerful. We talked about all the symptoms of each of these three emotions. And a lot of you guys could be thinking like, okay, you talked about how I experience each of these emotions, but now how do I deal with them when you are in a relationship that's dealing with one of these three core emotions, or when you're performing and one of these emotions come up, or in the workplace, how do you deal with these emotions? So in the next 9 slides, we're going to go through each of these emotions and how to deal with them. So real quick, we only got about 20 minutes left, so we're going to try to shorten and we'll try to open up some questions if we have. Dealing with sadness during a performance. It's important to, like I said, take your time. Experience what that sadness is giving you. And a lot of times it can be a learning experience. When you just broke up, and I know I'm going into the borders of Kristen's
That's all right.
into your territory, but just from experience, you can, when you break up with somebody, you feel extremely sad. And everybody knows that if you try to run out and try to find another partner, that's extremely unhealthy and nobody wants to be your rebound, right? So taking your time to really feel that sadness. When you lose a championship game, take time to experience what that sadness is telling you. What is it teaching you about how you handle situations and how you handle a loss, and how you are able to bounce back from that? How long does it take you? What do you do when you're in those scenarios? Do you cry? Do you look to talk to people? Do you look to be more introspective? Do you look to be alone? Like, what does that sadness give over to you? What do you learn from it? And sometimes you can even take notes, and it'll be very, very insightful for the next time it happens. You'll be like, okay, I've done this before. I've been in this situation before. What did I do last time? And often you repeat the same exact process without even realizing it. Or sometimes you can change it up based on how you've experienced the last one. That might help you go through that stage in your life a little bit easier. And then once you do get through that process, once you do get through those feelings and experience, now use it as fuel. Don't necessarily experience it as failure. We talked about in the beginning how your mind is a muscle. You don't have to see things as it being a failure. It's not that you're stupid. It's not that you're a failure. It's not that you failed your team. It's not that you failed what you were trying to achieve. It's just that it's a learning experience. You have to see it, whatever happened, as a stage. And now you're going to use that scenario to motivate you and to use it to bounce back, to become greater than you were. And we see this a lot with athletes, where they might lose a championship game, and then the next year they come back even better than they were before, because they used that setback and that failure, I put in quotations because it's not real failure. We don't see it as failure, but we see it as a learning process. And now use that to your advantage, and now become more hungry than everybody else that's you're competing against, because you've experienced what you experienced through that sadness. And like I said, failure doesn't have to define you if you don't let it. It's not something that you failed at. It's just something that's a learning process. Use it as something that you can get one up on somebody else. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean, become the best you through this experience. When it comes to anger during performance, I talked about a little bit before in the first slide of dealing with anger and performance. It's important to wait. And again, I think we've all three of us, Denise, Kristen, and myself, we've all talked about how it's important to really experience the emotion in the moment and understand where it's coming from and how it's coming up for you individually as a person, and what are you feeling in that moment. And when it comes to anger, it's so easy to be fast to lash out and be fast to react and impulsively blame somebody or impulsively say something that we wish, and Kristen knows a lot about this. We wish we never ever said to somebody, but since we just reacted way too quickly and we didn't stop and analyze that anger and where it's coming from, a lot of times there's no way to go back, and we regret every single second of that expression of that emotion. So when it comes to dealing with anger, and again, I talked about how anger in performance, your entire team will feel it when you express it, and you can't hide it if it's being expressed. I mean, it's there and it's contagious, and they'll all feel it. And you're bringing down the entire team because energy is contagious. So what you do is just stop, and you're about to impulsively say something or do something, but just stop and wait. Wait. If you can wait 15 seconds, that's a good start. If you can wait 30, even better. If you can wait 60, your chances of you doing anything because of the anger and impulsively doing something that you know you'll regret later, the chances of you doing that if you wait are way, way lower if you just stop and wait. And come back to the moment, breathe and analyze where this anger is coming from, and breathe it out. Take deep breaths. The longer breaths you take, the better. And if you could do these three things, your anger will be diminished in a huge way, and the chances of you taking these saying something or doing something that you wish you never have drop dramatically by just stopping, coming back to the moment, and breathing to analyze what you're feeling and why it's coming up for you. The last emotion and how to deal with it, excitement. Dealing with excitement is, like I mentioned this before, but using perspective. If you feel like you're stressed in a moment leading up to a performance, like we mentioned before, it can often be mistaken for fear, or fear could be mistaken, or excitement can be mistaken for fear. Really, you're excited and you're only scared because you're not interpreting the emotion properly. So when you are scared, which is really excited, you're stressed. And you can be positively stressed or negatively stressed. Positive stress can be good because you could use it to pump yourself up before a performance and get ready for that moment and get into that zone, get into that space where you feel like you're going to dominate at whatever position you are meant to dominate in. You're going to do it with your whole entire being and allow your muscle memory and your mechanics to take over the performance the way you've practiced for so long. So using perspective, using positive imagery is also very effective, where you think about when you feel like you're scared, shift that fear to something positive, where you would use your mental ability to think about what a positive outcome of what you're about to perform at couldn't look like. And that's also reframing, where instead of thinking of something negatively, just switch it to a positive, more helpful outcome, where instead of you thinking you're going to miss and you're going to fail and you're going to lose, think of yourself, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to perform the way I know how to, the way I've practiced for so long, and allow your abilities to be trusted. If you like this, then share it with your friends, tell your friends about it, and get connected. We're on Facebook. Find us at Yellow Mentality on Facebook or on Instagram. Reach out, connect. We love the interaction. If you want to request a topic for another webinar that you feel is relevant to other people or maybe even yourself, you're more than welcome to, again, reach out. And we love to connect with people. That's what we do. We're human beings. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night.